What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Football Over Analysis. Today we're talking about the San Francisco 49ers, their fantasy relevant players, and whether or not we are targeting or fading them in our drafts this summer. At quarterback, Brock Purdy last year struggled to stay healthy. He only made it through 9 games. However, when he was out there, he was fantastic. Purdy in those 9 games still was able to finish as the QB 24, despite missing almost half of the season. And with Purdy, we know that he's attached to a good offense. Kyle Shanahan offenses never have trouble producing fantasy points for us. And this year, the 49ers went out and made a lot of investments at the wide receiver position for Purdy. None bigger than bringing in Mike Evans from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That just gives Purdy an absolutely elite red zone weapon to work with. But also they go out and they sign Christian Kirk, who's been a reliable playmaker wherever he's gone throughout his career. And they also spend a second-round pick on Dejon Stribling. So there's no shortage of weapons for Purdy to work with here. So here you have Purdy in a great offense where he's posted plenty of great passing numbers in the past that now just has a fresh batch of new weapons for him to work with. And Purdy's going right now as the QB 12. He's a perfect guy that works for a wait on quarterback strategy. He's right in the tier of guys that I like in that range, like Bo Nix, Patrick Mahomes, Jared Goff. If you can walk away with any of those guys, then I feel a lot better about drafting those guys in the QB 12 and beyond range rather than spending an earlier round pick on a quarterback. At running back, Christian McCaffrey remains one of the highest risk, highest reward players in all of fantasy football. McCaffrey last year was able to stay healthy, and he finishes as the RB1 with 17 touchdowns and over 2,000 total yards, and also adding over 100 receptions. And McCaffrey's whole career has just been, it's either he's finishing as the RB1 or he's going to tank your entire fantasy roster. So the question now is, do we think that he can stay healthy for a second consecutive year? And the first thing that we have to look at is the history of these guys that finish as the RB1 with the absurd amount of touches, like McCaffrey last year with over 400 total touches between rushing and receiving. The history of those guys that get that high workload is usually some kind of decline the following year. And the most recent example of this was Saquon Barkley last year. Barkley, who finished as the RB2 in 2024 with 370 touches. Well, coming off of the year with the high workload, sure enough, Barkley's production dips. He only finishes as the RB14 last year. And with McCaffrey, even though he was able to stay healthy last year, there definitely looked like we were seeing some kind of decline there. His rushing efficiency was down. Really, he was propped up a lot by those 100 receptions and the touchdown scoring. So you're going to have McCaffrey, who is now officially on the wrong side of 30, coming off of a 400-touch season. It's a guy that's had an extensive injury history. I don't think that bodes well for what he's going to be able to do this year. And then you also have to factor in other things too, such as the addition of Mike Evans, who's going to command a good amount of the red zone work. If the scoring for Mike Evans cuts into the amount of touchdown upside that McCaffrey has, then all these factors put together, it's very hard for me to imagine McCaffrey repeating as an RB1 this year. So McCaffrey is going to be a pass for me this year. Then obviously you're going to have to pay a top-end pick in the first round to get him. And for me, I can't do that with a running back coming off of that amount of touches that has the injury history. That's something that I'm going to let my league mates take that chance on, and I'm going to use my first-round pick on safer options. On to the wide receiver position. As I mentioned earlier, Mike Evans, one of the big additions that the 49ers made this offseason. Evans coming off of a season where he himself battled injuries throughout his last year with the Bucs. It was the first time in Evans' career that he didn't reach the 1,000-yard milestone. I love the fit here for Evans in San Francisco. This, to me, is the equivalent of Devontae Adams going to the Rams last year. The 49ers are just going to be getting this red zone monster that is going to have no trouble putting up double-digit scores with Brock Purdy if he stays healthy. This also feels to me a lot like when Derrick Henry went to the Ravens, and you could see the production that was going to happen with the fit there coming from 1,000 miles away. Same thing with Evans here. And Evans right now is going as the wide receiver 24, putting him in a similar range as guys like DJ Moore, Christian Watson, Give me Mike Evans every single time over either one of those guys. And then you have Ricky Pearsall at wide receiver 2. And Pearsall is not a guy I have a lot of interest in. Through the first 2 years with Pearsall, it's been a struggle for him just to get on the field at all, let alone produce when he's on it. Last year, he plays in only 9 games, catching just 36 passes for just over 500 yards. He doesn't score at all. He's got no red zone role here. And it's really hard to imagine that changing. Are the 49ers ever going to consider using Pearsall in the red zone over Christian McCaffrey, over Mike Evans, over George Kittle? I don't think so. So you have those issues with the lack of red zone usage for Pearsall, and then you get to the issues where he can't stay on the field. Last season, remember, he plays the first 3 games of the season. He gets that mysterious knee injury, and then he's out for more than half the season at that point, and the team never IRs him. It was a very strange situation, but that's just the kind of stuff that Pearsall's dealt with in his first 2 years. It just seems to be thing after thing after thing, and ultimately, it's just not a guy that you want to touch in fantasy. I actually have more interest in Christian Kirk as a deeper sleeper than I do Pearsall, purely for the fact that obviously you have the injury concerns with Pearsall. You even have injury concerns with Mike Evans at this point, to be honest. And odds are there are going to be points in the season where one, if not both of them, are missing time. And when they do, Kirk is going to be one of those guys that's in line for an expanded role. And then George Kittle coming off of a torn Achilles is also going to be a fade for me. Kittle suffers this injury during the playoff game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's a nasty injury to come back from, especially for an older guy. So I can't imagine that Kittle is going to be useful until late in the season in a best-case scenario, and even then, it's something that I don't want to use up a roster spot on a guy coming off of a major injury like that. Generally, I find that it's very rare that stashing a guy on an IR for the majority of the season pays off. So, again, that's something that I'm going to let my league mates have all of. I don't have interest in George Kittle this year. And that's going to do it for this one, guys. So, 49ers, again, they're going to be a good offense. We know Brock Purdy is going to be able to put up prolific passing numbers here. They've added a lot of weapons for him. So, I'm in on Purdy. I'm in on Mike Evans. And then Christian McCaffrey, Ricky Pearsall, George Kittle, those are all going to be fades for me. But I thank you guys so much for watching, and we will talk to you next time when we go over the Los Angeles Rams.